Dragon Ball Super Superhero, the fourth film in the new series of Dragon Ball movies, just released in America, and after finally getting to see it, I wanted to give some of my initial thoughts in the movie in a review. This review will contain spoilers, so if you haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, I would recommend waiting and then watching it. But if you have gotten to, then stick around. Now, before we talk about the movie itself, I want to say how regrettable it is that I feel a large part of the hype and build-up that would have been had for the film as it was getting released was killed by Toei's horrible marketing campaign that it had for the film, and how long of a delay was given for the release it had in America. There was almost no media to speak of for the film as it was being released, and I knew personally friends who did not know that there was a new Dragon Ball movie coming out only weeks before it was going to hit theaters. Another huge factor in this was how long of a time it took between the release in Japan for the film and the release in America. It took them 2 months after the film came out in Japan to make it hit American theaters, and during that time, it was almost impossible to avoid spoilers anywhere you went online. Living in the digital age, it would not be hard to dub and release a film very quickly if they wanted to, and release it in the same week even as the original country did. With an IP as big as Dragon Ball, it makes no sense to me why they would delay it for so long. With the movie breaking the record for opening day box office of an anime film, a record that had been held for a long time by the first Pokemon movie, hopefully this is a sign to Toei that they should not ignore the West as much as they have been, and actually have a build-up for a film when they release it in other countries. Even with the horrible marketing, it still did this well, so imagine how it would have done with a big media push. But putting all that to the side, I think it's time we actually start talking about the film itself. So, what did I think? I'm going to break it down into sections and one by one go through them to talk about every aspect of the film. The first one I want to start with is the plot. I'm going to be upfront and say that my bias is definitely affecting me when I say this in this section, but when I heard that this movie was going to be about Gohan and Piccolo, I got super excited. Gohan was always my favorite character from Z, and Piccolo wasn't far behind him. So even though I already had reason to enjoy that aspect, I still think I would have enjoyed the plot in this film a good amount regardless of that. Following the Red Ribbon Army trying to take out the Z-Fighters by tricking Dr. Gero's grandson into building new androids to take them out, the story feels like something right out of a classic Z film, but without the feeling of it being just a retread of an anime arc redone for a film. The villains are given more depth than normal, with Gamma 1 and 2 being tricked into working for the Red Ribbon Army, and having to learn throughout the film that they are fighting for the wrong side. It makes you sympathize with them more, and makes some of the deaths in the film hit harder for that fact. Also, seeing Gohan finally come out of the shadow of being a jobber just for Goku to save him at the end that he has been in since the Buu arc, it was really cool. Seeing him and Piccolo be the ones to take out the villain was a nice change of pace. Gohan and Piccolo's new forms as well were awesome. Even if I will concede that they are a little bit redundant at this point, I can't help but get hyped up at a Dragon Ball power-up. The film did have some negatives as well, though, with Cell Max being one of them. Hearing that Cell was going to be in this film, it was very exciting when I first heard it. But the way they used him, I feel, was a giant missed opportunity. Making Cell have no personality like he did in this arc, and not even use any of his iconic moves, was very disappointing, with him feeling more like a Bile Broly character than anything, and you know how much people love that. I also feel like Pan, as cute as she was kind of just shoved in for cuteness points and didn't have much to do in the film. Although, if her only plot point was to be a damsel in distress, then I can't say she failed that. Overall, I think the film had a better plot than Broly, with the through line of Gohan needing to learn to be a strong fighter for his family again. It was more compelling than anything else the last few films it had to offer. So, I think it was more of a success than a failure. One of the most contentious aspects of this film as it was coming out was its animation style choice, with that being that it was going to be a fully 3D film. Now, 3D when used right can look very good, but I think everyone assumed after Broly that 2D and how it looked in that film was what we could expect for the next few Dragon Ball films that were going to be coming out, especially with no anime airing. Now, after seeing it, I can say that it did not look like the worst thing ever, or distract from the film itself, but I don't think you could say that any part of it ever looked better than Broly ever did. If you compare the worst of Broly and the best of Superhero, I think Broly would still come out on top. Now, this isn't exactly a fair complaint, since Broly is some of the best animation I have ever seen, but if they are in the same series and released fairly close together, it is going to be a comparison whether it is fair or not. Now, there are some good scenes, especially at the end, especially Gamma 2's sacrifice and Gohan's special beam cannon, but those moments were more rare than they weren't. The regular action did not look insanely good, but was better choreographed because 3D makes it easier to make fights look more realistic. I don't think I ever saw characters look off-model either, and the faces always looked expressive. Overall, the animation was nothing special, but did not distract from the film enough to be a net negative, so I would say it's just okay. This section will be all about the audio aspect, so that's soundtrack and voice acting. Now, speaking on voice acting, I only saw the dub version. I know, kill me. So that's the only one I can speak on, but with that being said, I enjoyed all of the performances that I heard. Christopher Sabat killed it as normal as Piccolo and what little we saw of Vegeta. He was able to do goofy when he needed, but also sounded serious at the right moments. I always felt in Kai he went a little too goofy with Piccolo at times, but I think he struck a good balance in this film. Kyle Herbert also killed it as Gohan, with him being able to go from Nerd Gohan, Fighter Gohan, and even Beast Gohan at the end, and they all sounded amazing. I don't think I can remember a bad performance. The only one that I might have a slight issue with being Dr. Hado, as he was a little over the top at times, but even that I could ignore. The music, to be honest, wasn't that memorable, with me off the top of my head not being able to think of any one song that stands out. It's disappointing because Broly had so many tracks that I wanted to put on my playlist right when I left the theater, so it's definitely a downgrade from the last film. Dragon Ball Super Hero, even with all the issues it had before its release, I feel was still a pretty solid Dragon Ball movie. The plot, while being simple, was a fun hero coming back story for Gohan, and had a transformation on par with Gogeta and Broly. It was a pretty solid story. The animation was nothing special, but did what it needed to do, and all the audio aspects were solid jobs. I think that's kind of the story of the film. It's not horrible in any one aspect, but does not outdo any other film in any aspect either. It is an above-average film, and that's why I think I want to rate it a 7 out of 10. Thank you to everyone who made it this far in the video, and if you did, comment what you thought about Super Hero. Did you enjoy it? Were there things you wish it didn't do? Let me know, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.